Right, so we're here with Gary Rathbone, the head of sport for SABC. And Gary, you've taken on a big journey here to virtually broadcast a race that is happening across various venues around South Africa. Tell us about some of the challenges that you're facing getting this to be broadcast.
Well, it is an interesting challenge. I mean, obviously, the times that we're facing with the COVID-19 pandemic and the way it's affected sports, and particularly mass participation sports in general, has created a challenge in itself. And it's been interesting to see how people have responded to that challenge, looking for innovative ways and using technology to try and overcome that challenge and still bring people those events in a way that kind of matter and can be exciting. And I think that, from a broadcast perspective, certainly, the real challenge has been is that, people talk about virtual races and things like that, how we can do that. My concern was always about how would that translate into a television environment, as a broadcast environment. We used to live sport being what it is, live sport, and that excitement that it generates and, is great from a television point of view, and audiences really love that. So how do you, translate, virtual events now that people are moving towards to create into a great television experience? And I think that in many ways, and that's kind of why we were so keen to push ahead with the relationship with the Cape Town Marathon, because I think that they seem to be coming up with some innovative ideas and trying to make it so that it was still engaging and it was still kind of, not just something that was coldly digital, but they actually had a much more engaged human element to it. And I think that is the key thing for us to make it much more watchable from a television point of view.
Without getting too technical, just tell us about some of the technologies that you'll be using to broadcast from the various venues.
Well, I mean, in some ways, look, to be honest with you, I'm not like at the level of our technicians are in terms of the way these technologies work. But the general principle is that at one level, it's still old technologies. It's still using cameras. It's still using people, filming themselves and in doing these things and in what they're doing. So that coverage, in a sense, is still kind of old style. I think where the real magic takes place is how these things are kind of brought together in the digital environment, and then to actually build a kind of a visual experience that much more closely approximates the actual live thing, so that people can actually be observed running in real time, and people can actually be placed within that environment that they would be part of running in the Cape Town Marathon, so that there's a familiarity with the environment. It's not just a kind of a person kind of running on the spot on their kitchen basically, or something like that. It's trying to make that, bring those elements together and make it into a single watchable entity. And I think that's where the magic, and that we can do so much more, where the magic takes place in that technology, in that digital environment where these things can be brought together. And I think that's what's really exciting. So it's a kind of combination of, as I said, the old style approach of television, of cameras, bringing together sort of new AI technology and virtual technology, in the digital space, to kind of marry these images into a single watchable event.
I guess the most important question for you as the head of sport for SABC is, are you nervous or excited?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is sometimes I'd say, well, being nervous is pretty exciting as well, basically, because if you're not nervous, then you're obviously not pushing things further enough, and certainly this is a big step forward. I mean, I'm excited about it because it's great to break new ground like this. And obviously, but the problem is that because you're breaking new ground, and these technologies that are involved, that we know how they kind of work in principle and practice, but we're not too sure how they're going to work in practice. Technology is a fantastic thing until it breaks down, and then all wheels come off quite spectacularly. But I'm excited about having to be able to push this forward and do something with it. I'm actually nervous as well to see how this pans out, because I hope it doesn't mean the end of real live marathon running, basically, and that we will get back to the actual events in the future. Because at the end of the day, we can do so much with digital technology, but nothing beats a real human experience of actually people. I mean, I can watch, FIFA football games on, those things for endlessly and say, well, it's great. It's almost like the real thing. But even in an empty stadium, when you're watching a team actually coming out and playing a live sports match, there's still nothing that touches that. So I hope we will get back to that again in the near future.
Just a final question. Is there a sort of measure as to what you would see as a successful broadcast as opposed to a non-successful broadcast?
Yeah, there is. I mean, for me, because this is what it's all about in television, is that it's a successful broadcast is that if we can actually make this into a very engaging, visual experience for viewers watching it on a television screen. And if people can engage and say, well, this is an engaging entertainment. This is, I want to sit and watch this because it's interesting from that point of view, in the same way that one would watch a live sports event. If we can come out of this and people said, well, that was a great television experience, a great visual experience for us to be part of, then I'd say that it's been a success. If people think, I know how I can see where all the wires are and how the dots are joined and, I can, where the paper, the sticky tape is holding them together and it doesn't convince me, then I would consider it not, we haven't really achieved what we'd hoped to. But I have every confidence that the team that are working on this, and this is why we are willing to take a chance with the Cape Town Marathon, will actually pull this off and deliver something that is be unique and historic and certainly very watchable on TV.
That's great, Gary. Thanks very much. That's absolutely perfect. Great interview.
Brilliant. Nice to speak to you guys.
Yeah, nice to chat to you. And then all you can do is you can just end call on your side and then we're all done. Thanks for your time.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks,
Brilliant.
man.
Nice
Cheers.
to talk to you.
Cheers, man. Bye-bye.
Bye.